Hi, I'm Isabella Mitchell, but everyone calls me Bella. At 34, I've built a tech company worth $40 million, but 18 years ago, my mom packed my bags and told me to leave so she could focus on her new family. Now, after nearly 2 decades of silence, she's back with her hand out, demanding I pay for her children's college education. The woman who chose her new family over me now wants me to fund their future. What would you do if the parent who abandoned you suddenly demanded your hard-earned money? Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to rebuild your life from scratch. My childhood started normally enough. For the first 5 years, it was just mom and me in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Boston. My father, Trevor, walked out when I was 5, leaving nothing but a half-empty closet and sporadic birthday cards that eventually stopped coming altogether. Despite our financial struggles, Mom, Pamela, and I were a team. She worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, and I learned early on to be self-sufficient. I'd have dinner ready when she came home exhausted from her shift at the department store, followed by her evening waitressing gig. Weekends were sacred. We'd curl up with discount movies and microwave popcorn, building pillow forts in our tiny living room. Those simple moments felt magical. Everything changed when I turned 12. Mom met Gerald Wilson at the restaurant where she worked. He was a regular customer, a mid-level manager at an insurance company who always requested her section. Within 3 months, he was a fixture in our lives. Gerald was charming around Mom, bringing her flowers and taking us to restaurants that required reservations. But when Mom wasn't looking, there was something in his eyes when he looked at me, something cold and calculating. "You're quite the expense for your mother," he commented once while Mom was in the kitchen. "She could have had such a different life without having to support you all these years." I still remember how my stomach knotted at his words, but when I told Mom, she laughed it off. "Gerald's just joking, honey. He has a dry sense of humor." Gerald had 2 children from his previous marriage, Hayden and Madison, 10 and 8 at the time. They visited every other weekend, and suddenly our apartment wasn't just ours anymore. Madison would go through my things without asking. Hayden made it clear I wasn't welcome when they were around. "Dad says this is going to be our place soon anyway," he informed me while helping himself to my favorite cereal. The wedding happened fast, a small ceremony when I was 13. I was a bridesmaid in an ill-fitting dress that Gerald's mother selected. "We need to hide those awkward teenage angles," she'd said during the fitting, pinching at my sides. Within a month, we moved into Gerald's 4-bedroom house in a suburban neighborhood with manicured lawns and HOA regulations. It should have been an upgrade from our apartment, but I was given the smallest bedroom, really just a converted office with a window that faced the neighbor's brick wall. Hayden and Madison each got rooms twice the size of mine, with Gerald explaining, "They're only here part-time, so they need special spaces to feel at home." The first year in that house, I watched my relationship with Mom erode like shoreline in a hurricane. Family dinners became conversations between Mom, Gerald, and his kids, while I sat silently, becoming increasingly invisible. When I tried to share something about school or my friends, Gerald would interject with, "Bella, the adults are talking," or "Let's hear about Madison's soccer tournament instead." Mom stopped checking my homework or asking about my day. When I made honor roll that first semester, she signed the certificate without comment, too busy preparing a special celebration dinner for Madison's elementary school art award. Gerald's campaign to isolate me was subtle, but relentless. He'd forget to tell me about family outings until they were leaving. "Oh, Bella, there's leftover pizza in the fridge. We're taking the kids to Six Flags." My invitations to friends were discouraged because the house needs to stay presentable, or we can't afford to feed extra people. When I was 15, Mom announced she was pregnant. The baby, Ryan, became the center of everyone's universe before he even arrived. The nursery preparation took over the house and the conversation. Mom and Gerald converted the guest room into an elaborate nursery with hand-painted murals and custom furniture. "Isn't it wonderful?" Mom asked, showing me the completed room. Finally, a child we'll raise together from the beginning. The "we" in that sentence didn't include me. By this point, I'd learned to find refuge in academics. School became my sanctuary. I joined every club that would keep me on campus until dinner time. My teachers became the adults who actually saw me, encouraged me, celebrated my achievements. I stayed in the library until closing, telling myself it was to study, but really, it was to avoid going home. One night, I returned later than usual after a debate team practice. From the hallway, I overheard Gerald and Mom talking in their bedroom. "She's eating us out of house and home," Gerald complained. "Teenagers are expensive, and with the baby coming, we need to think about our priorities." I waited for Mom to defend me, to remind him that I was her daughter, her priority too. Instead, her response shattered something inside me. "I know, honey. She's almost 16 now. Maybe it's time she learned some independence." I backed away silently, my heart hammering in my chest. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, realizing that in my mother's new life equation, I had become a negative value. Despite the deteriorating situation at home, I maintained my position on the honor roll, throwing myself into academics with the desperate energy of someone building a life raft. My plan was simple: excel in school, earn scholarships, and escape to college 2 years early if possible. I'd researched early admission programs and had started drafting application essays, though I kept this secret from everyone except my best friend Alexandra, Lexi for short. On March 17th, my 16th birthday passed without celebration. Mom had forgotten entirely, and when Lexi's mother called to ask if I could come over for cake that weekend, I overheard Gerald telling her, "We're trying to teach Bella fiscal responsibility. No extravagances." Exactly 2 weeks later, I returned from school to find 3 garbage bags and my backpack sitting on the front porch. My key didn't work in the lock. After 5 minutes of confused knocking, Gerald opened the door, standing firmly in the threshold to block my entry. "Your mother and I have made a decision," he said, his tone businesslike. "With the baby coming in 2 months, we need your room for a proper nursery annex. The current nursery will be too small once he starts accumulating toys and needs a proper play area." I stared at him, not comprehending. "What are you talking about? Where am I supposed to go?" Mom appeared behind him then, one hand resting on her swollen belly. Her eyes couldn't meet mine. "Honey, you're 16 now. You're practically an adult," she said, her voice thin and rehearsed. "Many kids your age are already working and living independently. Gerald and I need to focus on the little ones now." The weight of what was happening crashed over me in waves. They were throwing me out. My own mother was evicting me to make room for her new family. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "Mom, where am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to finish school?" Gerald cleared his throat. "We've prepared for this transition." He held out an envelope. "There's $300 cash here. That should be enough for a deposit on a room rental. Your school counselor can help you with the logistics of continuing your education." My hands shook as I took the envelope. $300. The price of discarding a daughter. "We've already contacted your father," Mom added, still not meeting my eyes. "He said he's not in a position to help right now." Of course he wasn't. The man had been absent for 11 years. "What about Grandma Louise?" I asked, desperation rising in my voice. "My maternal grandmother lived 3 hours away in a small one-bedroom apartment. She's too elderly to take on a teenager," Gerald answered for my mother. "Besides, this is an opportunity for you to grow up. You're always talking about independence." I wasn't. I had never once expressed a desire to live on my own at 16. That was their narrative, constructed to alleviate their guilt. Rain began to sprinkle down, dotting the garbage bags containing my possessions. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. "Can I at least come in and use the bathroom? Call someone." My voice had diminished to a near whisper. Gerald checked his watch. "Make it quick. We have a birthing class at 7. Inside, the house already showed signs of my erasure. The few photos that had included me were gone from the hallway wall. My bedroom door stood open, revealing a half-dismantled space. Madison was sitting on my stripped mattress, sorting through a box of my desk items. "Oh, you're still here?" she asked, not looking up. Dad said I could have your desk lamp for my room. I didn't respond, locking myself in the bathroom instead. With trembling fingers, I texted Lexi. Emergency. They're kicking me out.
Can you come get me?
Her response was immediate. OMG. Staying with friend or picking up now? Now please. I'm on the porch. Bring your mom if possible. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not where they could see me break. When I emerged, Mom was alone in the hallway. Bella, I know this seems harsh, but you'll understand when you're older. When you have your own children, you'll realize sometimes hard choices have to be made for the family. I am your family, I said quietly. She looked away. You know what I mean. I didn't. Outside, I sat on the porch steps beside my bagged belongings, watching the street for Lexi's car. Gerald came out once to hand me my birth certificate and social security card. Your mother thought you might need these, he said, as if conferring a great kindness. 20 minutes later, Lexi arrived with her mother Maria, their faces tight with concern and anger. Maria Peterson had always been kind to me, but I'd never seen her as furious as when she stepped onto that porch, taking in the scene. Where is your mother? She demanded. Inside. But please, can we just go? I don't want to make a scene. Maria looked torn but respected my wishes. She and Lexi helped load my bags into their SUV. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house where I'd spent the last 3 years. Mom stood at the living room window, one hand resting on her belly, the other lifting slightly in what might have been a wave. I turned away. That night, after a tearful explanation to Lexi's parents, I was set up in their guest room. Charles, Lexi's father and a family attorney, was already talking about filing for emancipation. What they've done is abandonment, plain and simple, he fumed. We could fight this, Bella. But I was too numb to think about legal battles. I just needed to survive. After everyone had gone to bed, I made one last attempt to reach my mother. I called her cell phone, listening to it ring until voicemail picked up. I couldn't bring myself to leave a message. A text came through as I was setting the phone down. This is for the best. You'll understand when you're older. Love, Mom. That was the last communication I would have with her for nearly 2 decades. In Lexi's darkened bedroom, where I'd retreated after finding the guest room too unfamiliar, I finally allowed myself to cry, silent, body-racking sobs that left me hollow. Lexi wordlessly handed me tissues and kept a gentle hand on my back until I fell into exhausted sleep. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a strange sense of clarity. In the kitchen, Maria was making pancakes, treating me with the careful consideration one might show a wounded animal. We'll figure this out, sweetheart, she promised. I nodded, a resolve hardening within me. I will never need them again, I said, more to myself than anyone else. It was both a promise and a prophecy. The Peterson family became my lifeline. Charles helped me file for legal emancipation, a process that took 3 grueling months of paperwork, court appearances, and humiliating interviews where I had to repeatedly explain why my own mother had discarded me. Pamela didn't contest the petition. She didn't even show up for the hearing. The judge, a stern woman with surprisingly kind eyes, granted my emancipation with a statement that would stay with me. Young lady, some people are given families. Others have to build their own. I think you'll build something remarkable. Living with the Petersons was meant to be temporary, but they insisted I stay through high school graduation. You focus on your studies and college applications, Maria told me. We'll handle the rest. Their generosity was overwhelming, but I couldn't bear being a charity case. The day after my emancipation was finalized, I took a bus across town and applied for every job within walking distance of Lexi's house. By the end of the week, I had secured 2 positions, morning shifts at Cornerstone Coffee Shop and weekend hours at Riverside Bookstore. Between the 2, I could work 30 hours weekly while maintaining my class schedule. You don't need to do this, Charles argued when I showed him my new work schedule.
Idoy insisted.
I need to know I can stand on my own. My routine became punishing. Up at 4:30 a.m. for the 5 a.m. opening shift to the coffee shop, then directly to school by 8 a.m. After classes, I'd study in the library until closing, then return to the Petersons to collapse for a few hours before starting again. Weekends were consumed by 8-hour shifts at the bookstore, with homework squeezed into lunch breaks and quiet moments between customers. Despite the exhaustion, I maintained my 4.0 GPA. My guidance counselor, Miss Harlow, pulled me aside after noticing the dark circles under my eyes. "Isabella, you're going to burn out," she warned. "Your academics are impressive, but colleges also look at extracurriculars." "I have those," I countered. "I work 2 jobs." "That shows responsibility." She sighed. "It shows necessity. And while that's admirable, you're missing opportunities for leadership and community engagement that scholarships committees value." Reluctantly, I cut back my coffee shop hours to join the debate team and volunteer at a literacy program. The reduction in income made me anxious, but Ms. Harlow was right. These activities strengthened my college applications significantly. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. When I did manage a few uninterrupted hours, nightmares often jolted me awake, dreams where I was locked out of houses, searching for keys that disappeared from my hands, or running down endless hallways looking for a mother who kept turning corners just out of reach.
Lexi worried about me.
"You're turning into a zombie," she observed one Sunday afternoon, finding me asleep atop a pile of calculus homework. "When was the last time you did something fun?" I couldn't remember. Fun seemed like a distant concept from someone else's life. The worst moments came unexpectedly. Standing in the grocery store aisle, seeing a mother help her teenage daughter select prom shoes. Hearing classmates complain about curfews and overprotective parents. The hollow ache would ambush me, a physical pain that took my breath away. During one particularly bad night, Maria found me sobbing in the bathroom at 3 a.m. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, gathering me into her arms. "What's wrong with me?" I choked out. Why wasn't I enough for her to keep? Maria held me tighter. "Nothing is wrong with you. The failure here is not yours." Graduation day arrived with a bittersweet edge. The Petersons cheered loudly as I walked across the stage as valedictorian. I scanned the audience reflexively, some stubborn part of me still hoping to see my mother's face. She wasn't there. My speech centered on resilience and self-creation, careful words that revealed nothing of my personal circumstances while speaking directly to my experience. "Sometimes the path we expected to walk is suddenly blocked," I told my classmates. In those moments, we discover we are the mapmakers of our own journey. The real triumph came a week later. A full scholarship to State University, covering tuition, books, and housing. I had applied to 17 schools and received offers from 12, but State's computer science program and comprehensive financial package made the decision simple. That summer, I worked 3 jobs, adding evening shifts at a local restaurant to my existing positions. Every dollar went into savings for expenses the scholarship wouldn't cover. Winter clothes, a laptop, transportation. The Petersons offered to help, but I gently declined. I needed to know I could do this on my own. The night before leaving for college, I allowed myself a moment of weakness. Using Lexi's computer, I searched for my mother on social media. There she was, smiling in family photos with Gerald, Hayden, Madison, and Ryan, now a toddler with my mother's eyes. They looked happy, unburdened. In one Christmas photo, they posed in matching sweaters in front of a lavishly decorated tree. The caption read, "So blessed to have our perfect family together." I closed the browser, a cold numbness spreading through me. I had been edited out of the narrative so completely that there wasn't even a space where I should have been. Freshman orientation at State University brought an unexpected turning point. During the department welcome session, Professor Diana Hayes singled me out after seeing my placement test scores. "You tested out of our first 2 programming courses," she noted, reviewing my file. "That's unusual for someone without formal training." "I taught myself coding during high school," I explained. "It helped pay the bills, building websites for local businesses." Something in my phrasing caught her attention. She studied me more carefully. "Come by my office this week. I run a mentorship program for promising students, particularly those who've had to overcome significant obstacles. Diana became more than a professor. She became the first adult to see potential in me rather than damage. Under her guidance, I navigated the complex world of higher education while developing my technical skills. My living situation was less ideal. The scholarship covered basic dormitory housing, but I opted for a cheaper off-campus apartment shared with 3 other students to save money. Our unit was tiny, with peeling linoleum and unreliable heating, but the rent fit my budget. Dinner often consisted of ramen noodles enhanced with whatever vegetables were on sale. My clothes came from thrift stores, carefully selected to look professional enough for the internships Diana encouraged me to pursue. Relationships remained my blind spot. When classmates invited me to parties or study groups, I found reasons to decline. Getting close to people meant risking rejection. A few determined souls, like my roommate Melissa, broke through my defenses, but I kept even these friendships at a careful distance. Romance was even more complicated. During sophomore year, a teaching assistant named Tyler Bennett asked me out after a study session. Handsome and kind, he persisted through my initial rejections until I finally agreed to coffee. 3 dates in, when he casually mentioned visiting his parents for Thanksgiving, I panicked. "What's wrong?" he asked, seeing my expression. "Nothing. I just don't do family stuff." He looked confused. "Everyone does family stuff." "I don't have a family," I stated flatly. Tyler reached for my hand.
You could tell me about it.
But I couldn't. The words lodged in my throat, and I made an excuse to leave early. I ghosted him afterward, ignoring his concerned texts until they stopped coming. It was easier than explaining, easier than being vulnerable. Holidays became a particular challenge. Lexi always invited me to join her family, but watching their warm interactions only highlighted what I was missing. I began volunteering at homeless shelters during Thanksgiving and Christmas breaks, finding comfort in helping others who were also alone. Gradually, I built what Diana called a chosen family, fellow students who, for various reasons, had complicated relationships with their biological relatives. We created our own traditions, celebrated our accomplishments, and supported each other through setbacks. It wasn't the family I was born into, but it was the one that helped me survive. My junior year marked a turning point. Professor Diana Hayes recommended me for a competitive summer internship at TechFusion, a mid-sized software company specializing in educational platforms. The selection process was brutal, 5 rounds of interviews and a coding challenge that kept me awake for 48 hours straight. When the acceptance email arrived, I stared at my ancient laptop screen in disbelief. "They're paying you how much?" My roommate gasped when I shared the internship details. The summer stipend was more money than I'd ever seen at once, enough to replace my struggling laptop and still have savings left over. More importantly, it was validation that my skills had genuine market value. At TechFusion, I thrived in the fast-paced environment. My supervisor, impressed by my work ethic, assigned me increasingly complex projects. By the end of summer, I had contributed to a major feature release that earned mentions in industry publications. The company offered me a part-time position during my senior year, with a full-time role waiting after graduation. I graduated summa cum laude, with Diana beaming proudly in the audience alongside the Petersons. TechFusion's offer was generous for an entry-level position, but I negotiated for more, a skill Diana had specifically coached me on. Women, especially those without family safety nets, need to advocate fiercely for their worth, she'd advised. My early professional years passed in a blur of 60-hour workweeks, industry conferences, and night classes for my master's degree. I changed companies twice, each move bringing significant salary increases and broader responsibilities. Living frugally remained ingrained in me. Even as my bank account grew, I maintained simple habits, investing most of my income rather than spending it. The seed of Mind Matrix germinated at a tech conference in Chicago. While presenting a paper on adaptive learning algorithms, I met Cameron Wright, a charismatic business developer with experience in educational startups. During a coffee break, our conversation shifted from polite networking to excited brainstorming. "The problem with current educational software," I explained, sketching on a napkin, is that it treats learning paths as linear. But cognitive development is multidimensional. Cameron leaned forward, intrigued. What if we created something that could map those dimensions in real time? Adapt not just to what a student knows, but how they learn. By the end of the conference, we had exchanged contact information and agreed to continue the conversation. 3 months of late-night video calls and shared documents later, we decided to take the leap. I maxed out my credit cards to fund initial development while Cameron leveraged his industry connections to arrange meetings with potential investors. Our first office was Cameron's garage, converted with second-hand desks and the fastest internet connection we could afford. For 6 months, we subsisted on minimal salaries, pouring every resource into building our prototype. The breakthrough came when my algorithm successfully demonstrated adaptation to different learning styles in our pilot testing with local schools. Our first significant investment came from Stanley Thompson, a retired executive who had made his fortune in educational publishing. After our pitch, he sat silently for a full minute before speaking. "My grandson has dyslexia," he finally said. "He's brilliant with numbers, but struggles terribly with reading. Your system, it could have changed his entire educational experience." His initial investment allowed us to hire 3 additional developers and move into proper office space. A year later, our first major contract with LearnQuest, an established online education platform, provided the stability we needed to expand further. Throughout this professional growth, I continued working with Dr. Grace Winters, a therapist specialized in abandonment trauma. Our weekly sessions helped me process the emotional scars that still affected my relationships and decision-making. "I notice you use the word dispensable frequently," Dr. Winters observed during one session. "Tell me about that." I shrugged. "It's just a fact. People are dispensable. Businesses replace employees. Parents replace children. That's your experience, not a universal truth," she countered gently. "The ability to trust requires acknowledging that while some people will fail you, others won't." These insights slowly reshaped my approach to relationships. I began allowing colleagues to become friends, accepting invitations to non-work social events, and even attempted dating again. Though my brief relationship with marketing executive Joel Richardson ended when his possessiveness triggered old anxieties, Mind Matrix grew exponentially over the next 5 years. From our original team of 5, we expanded to 50 employees, then 100. Our adaptive learning platform gained recognition for its effectiveness with diverse learning styles, particularly helping students with processing differences who struggled in traditional educational environments. At 28, I purchased my first property, a small but modern apartment in a secure building. After years of precarious housing, owning my space represented a security I had craved since being thrown out at 16. I slept on the floor the first night, unable to believe it was really mine. The company's trajectory accelerated dramatically during the pandemic. As schools worldwide shifted to remote learning, demand for effective educational technology skyrocketed. Mind Matrix was positioned perfectly. Our years of development in adaptive learning made us leaders in a suddenly essential industry. By my 32nd birthday, we had secured Series C funding at a valuation that made headlines in tech publications. I purchased my dream house, a modernist structure with walls of glass overlooking a protected woodland area. The master bedroom was larger than the entire apartment I'd shared with 3 roommates in college. Sometimes I still woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting that this space belonged to me, that no one could take it away. A Forbes feature story called me Education's Tech Revolutionary, highlighting both Mind Matrix's innovations and my unconventional path. The article mentioned my estrangement from family in a single sentence, respecting my request to keep personal details private. The accompanying photo showed me in my office, surrounded by my leadership team, my chosen family. Through it all, I maintained careful boundaries around my inner circle. Cameron knew most of my history, as did Diana, who had transitioned from mentor to dear friend. The Petersons remained important fixtures in my life, with Lexi's children calling me Auntie Bella. Dr. Winters continued our sessions, now focused less on trauma processing and more on maintaining balance amid success. For 18 years, I had no contact with my mother or her family. I didn't seek information about them, and they made no attempts to reach me. The complete severance was both a wound and a callous. Painful but protective. I had built my life without them, brick by determined brick. I assumed they had done the same. Until that Tuesday morning when my carefully constructed world tilted on its axis with a simple email notification. Pamela Wilson wants to reconnect. The email arrived during my morning routine, coffee at my kitchen island while reviewing overnight reports from our international team. The notification chimed softly, nestled between meeting reminders and industry newsletters. The sender name jolted me like an electric shock. Pamela Wilson. Subject: we need to talk. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. The room suddenly seemed too bright, too sharp. My pulse hammered in my ears as my body responded before my mind could process what was happening. Breath shortened. Hands trembled. The clinical part of my brain recognized the symptoms of an anxiety attack, even as I was swept into its current. I set the cup down carefully, focusing on the solid surface beneath my palms. One breath. Another. The grounding techniques Dr. Winters had taught me. When my vision cleared, I stared at the notification, half expecting it to disappear like a hallucination. It remained. After 18 years of silence, what could possibly warrant communication now? I didn't open the email immediately. Instead, I called Dr. Winters' office and left a message requesting an emergency session. Then I texted Cameron to reschedule our morning strategy meeting, citing a personal matter. He responded immediately, unusual for him before 7 a.m. Everything okay? Need backup? Not sure yet. We'll explain later. For hours, I orbited around the unopened email like it was a black hole, simultaneously drawn toward and repelled by its gravity. Finally, after my virtual session with Dr. Winters, I felt stable enough to look. The message was brief. Isabella, I've been following your success with pride. We need to discuss some family matters in person. I'm in town for the week staying at the Westlake Hotel. Let me know when we can meet.
Mom, no epaledi.
No acknowledgement of our estrangement. Just pride in the success she had no part in creating and a presumptuous request for my time. The casual signature, Mom, felt like an unearned intimacy. Dr. Winters had advised setting clear boundaries for any potential meeting. Neutral territory, she emphasized. Somewhere public, but private enough for conversation. And bring support if you need it. After 3 drafts, I sent a response agreeing to meet at Elysian Cafe, an upscale establishment known for its discreet seating and professional clientele. I chose Friday morning, giving myself 2 days to prepare emotionally while not allowing too much time for anxiety to build. I didn't offer to meet at her hotel, nor did I suggest bringing anyone else along. The intervening 48 hours passed in a haze of distraction. I reviewed quarterly projections without absorbing the numbers. I nodded through presentations while mentally rehearsing what I might say to the woman who had discarded me. Cameron noticed my preoccupation but respected my privacy until I was ready to share. Friday morning arrived with oppressive clarity. I dressed with unusual care, a sleek charcoal suit that had been featured in my Forbes profile, subtle makeup, hair pulled back in a precise bun. Armor, not enhancement. Elysian Cafe occupied the ground floor of a restored historical building, its interior a careful balance of old-world elegance and modern minimalism. I arrived 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. The waitress recognized me, a hazard of recent media coverage, but maintained professional discretion. When Pamela entered precisely at 10 a.m., I almost didn't recognize her. In my mind, she had remained the 37-year-old who had stood behind Gerald on that porch, avoiding my eyes. The woman approaching my table was in her mid-50s now, her once auburn hair streaked with gray, fine lines etching the corners of her eyes and mouth. She had gained weight, her figure softer than I remembered. But her eyes, those were unchanged, the same hazel as my own. She spotted me and froze momentarily, her expression cycling through recognition, shock, and something that might have been regret before settling into a nervous smile. Isabella, she breathed, approaching the table. You look incredible. I didn't stand.
Bella, I corrected automatically.
I go by Bella now. Of course, Bella. She settled into the chair across from me, arranging her purse and scarf with fidgeting hands. Thank you for agreeing to meet. The waitress appeared, saving me from immediate response. We ordered espresso for me, Earl Grey tea for her. The same preference she'd had 18 years ago. This small consistency unsettled me more than any change could have. When we were alone again, an awkward silence expanded between us. She broke it first. Your company is doing remarkably well. I saw you in Forbes last month. And that interview on TechVision. You were always so smart. Thank you, I replied, my voice carefully modulated. Though I'm curious how you've been following my career. We haven't exactly been in contact. She had the grace to look embarrassed. Alexandra's mother, Maria. She and I reconnected on social media a few years ago. She occasionally mentions you. The revelation that Maria Peterson, who had been more mother to me than Pamela, maintained any connection with the woman who had abandoned me felt like a small betrayal. I made a mental note to address this later.
I see.
Well, I doubt you requested this meeting to discuss my media appearances. What family matters do we need to discuss? Pamela sipped her tea, clearly searching for the right words. You've done so well for yourself. Built this amazing company, become so successful. I had no choice but to succeed, I stated flatly. Failure wasn't an option when I had no safety net. She flinched but continued. The thing is, Hayden and Madison are college age now. Hayden's been accepted to Princeton for their architecture program, and Madison wants to pursue pre-med at Johns Hopkins. The direction of the conversation became suddenly, painfully clear. Both prestigious institutions, I noted neutrally. Congratulations to them. Yes, well. Pamela set down her cup. That's partly why I wanted to see you. These schools are extremely expensive, even with partial scholarships. Hayden's program alone is over $70,000 a year with housing and expenses. I waited, forcing her to articulate the request explicitly. Gerald's business ventures haven't been successful lately. We're quite underwater with the mortgage and with 3 tuitions to consider. She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. We're family, Bella. Family helps family. I thought, given your financial situation, you might be willing to assist with their education. The audacity momentarily robbed me of speech. 18 years of silence, and she appeared now with her hand extended, expecting financial support for the very family that had replaced me. 3 tuitions? I finally managed. Yes, Ryan's a senior in high school now. He's looking at NYU for film studies. Ryan, the baby whose impending arrival had been the excuse for my expulsion. Now approaching the age I had been when they threw me out. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me to pay for the college education of your children with Gerald. The same children you prioritized over me to the point of making me homeless at 16. Is that correct? Pamela shifted uncomfortably. That's a harsh way of putting it. After everything I sacrificed raising you. Sacrificed. The word escaped as a sharp laugh. You abdicated your responsibility. You chose a man over your child. You were practically an adult, she countered, the familiar justification slipping out. And it worked out for the best, didn't it? Look at what you've accomplished. I succeeded despite what you did, not because of it. The coffee cup trembled slightly in my hand. I set it down carefully, unwilling to show how deeply this conversation was affecting me. Pamela leaned forward, her expression earnest. Bella, the past is the past. Can't we move forward as a family? The kids are so bright, so promising. They shouldn't have to struggle through student loans and minimum wage jobs like I did. I finished. Because that would be terrible, wouldn't it? That's not what I meant. But it was exactly what she meant. The realization washed over me in a wave of clarity. In her mind, my success had retroactively justified her abandonment. More disturbingly, She saw my resources as rightfully available to her real family, the children she hadn't discarded. How much? I asked abruptly. Hope flickered across her face. Well, with 3 tuitions, plus some help with our mortgage, we're talking about maybe $200,000 a year? For the next 4 to 6 years, depending on their graduate school plans. Over $1 million. The figure wasn't impossible for me. Mind Matrix's recent valuation and my majority ownership made it technically feasible. But the presumption behind the request was staggering. We could set up a monthly transfer, she continued, misinterpreting my silence as consideration. Gerald has prepared some figures. He wanted to come today, but I thought it would be better if we spoke woman to woman first. The mention of Gerald sharpened my focus. I stood abruptly, gathering my belongings. I need to go. But we haven't finished discussing. I've heard enough for today. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, as if coming from underwater. I'll consider your request and be in touch. When can we expect the first check? She called as I turned to leave. I didn't answer, maintaining my composure until I reached my car in the parking garage. Once inside the privacy of the tinted windows, I gripped the steering wheel and released a shuddering breath that transformed into a sob. The audacity, the entitlement, the complete lack of recognition for the trauma they had inflicted. My phone buzzed with a text from Pamela. Think about what family means, Bella. Blood is thicker than water. I laughed bitterly through my tears. She had the proverb wrong. The original saying was the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning chosen bonds are stronger than those of mere biology. My hands still shaking, I called the one person who had earned the right to see me in this state. Cameron? I need you. Can you come over? By the time Cameron arrived at my house, I had moved through the initial shock into a cold, analytical anger. He listened without interruption as I recounted the meeting, his expression darkening with each detail. The absolute nerve. He finally exploded when I finished. After what they did to you, they expect you to bankroll their kids. I hope you told her to go to hell. I didn't tell her anything. I needed to process first. Cameron paced my living room, more agitated than I'd ever seen him. There's nothing to process. The answer is no. End of discussion. His protective fury was comforting, but didn't address the complexity of my feelings. Over the next week, I consulted my inner circle individually, seeking diverse perspectives on a situation with no clear moral guideline. Lexi, who had witnessed my devastation firsthand, was unequivocal. They abandoned you when you needed them most. You owe them nothing. She pulled up old photos on her phone. Me sleeping on her bedroom floor that first night, hollow-eyed at graduation, working double shifts during college breaks. Don't forget what they put you through. Don't let them manipulate you now. Diana offered a more measured view, shaped by her own complicated family history. The question isn't whether you owe them. You don't. It's whether helping would bring you peace or reopen wounds. Over tea in her university office, surrounded by books and student papers, she added, family obligations are culturally constructed. In some traditions, you would be expected to support them regardless of past treatment. In others, they severed all claims on you the moment they put you out. You get to decide which framework governs your relationship now. Dr. Winters provided the most comprehensive analysis during an extended session. You're experiencing several overlapping emotional responses, she observed. There's the trauma response. The 16-year-old in you is still hurt and angry. There's moral indignation at their entitlement. But I'm also hearing something else, curiosity about these siblings you never knew. She was right. Despite my resentment toward Pamela and Gerald, I couldn't help wondering about Hayden, Madison, and Ryan. What were they like? Did we share any traits or interests? Had they ever asked about their older sister, or had my existence been completely erased from the family narrative? They're innocent in this, I admitted. They didn't choose to be part of my replacement family. True, Dr. Winters acknowledged. But that doesn't automatically make you responsible for their education. If I helped them, would I be validating what Pamela and Gerald did? Telling them it was acceptable to throw away one child because they had others? That depends on your terms and boundaries. Financial assistance doesn't require emotional submission. Throughout these conversations, Pamela continued her campaign via text and email. The messages escalated from gentle reminders to increasingly desperate appeals. Hayden needs to confirm his housing selection by next week. Madison's deposit is due on the 15th. Gerald says we might need to take out a second mortgage if we can't get help soon. Each message irritated me further, particularly the invocation of Gerald as some authority whose concerns should motivate me. Curiosity drove me to research my half-siblings online. Hayden's Instagram showed a lanky young man with architectural models and soccer trophies. Madison's profile featured pre-med volunteering and sorority events. Ryan, still in high school, posted amateur film projects and photography. They seemed talented, hardworking, normal young adults raised in comfortable suburban privilege. Their profiles also revealed glimpses of a family life I had been excluded from: holiday gatherings, graduation celebrations, beach vacations. One photo particularly struck me. Pamela's 50th birthday party with a banner reading, "World's Best Mom," hanging in the background. The casual cruelty of that declaration, knowing what she had done to her firstborn, took my breath away. Insomnia became my nightly companion as I wrestled with the decision. During one particularly restless night, I remembered a similar crossroads years earlier, when I received my first significant bonus at Tech Fusion. The amount had been enough to pay off my student loans and still have a comfortable cushion left over. That night, I had driven past Pamela and Gerald's house, parking a block away to stare at the warmly lit windows. I had fantasized about walking up to the door, showing them the check, proving I had succeeded despite their abandonment. In the end, I had driven away without approaching. My success wasn't about them. I wouldn't give them that power. Now, with much more substantial resources at my disposal, I faced a more complex version of the same question. What did I owe this family that had rejected me? What did I owe myself? The decision crystallized one morning at 3 a.m. after another text from Pamela. Gerald says if you really loved family, you'd help without all this hesitation. Something snapped. I grabbed my keys and drove through the empty pre-dawn streets to my old neighborhood. The houses looked smaller than I remembered, the once impressive lawns more ordinary. I parked across from my former home, still owned by Pamela and Gerald according to property records I had checked. The house stood dark and quiet. Somewhere inside, the people who had cast me out slept peacefully, confident in their right to demand my financial support. The absurdity struck me suddenly, transforming my anger into something approaching clarity. Family wasn't about biology or obligation. It was about choice, daily choices to support, protect, and value one another. Pamela had made her choice 18 years ago. Now I would make mine. I called Dr. Winters from my car, despite the early hour. When her sleepy voice answered, I spoke with newfound certainty. I know what I need to do for me. I selected the observatory for our meeting, an upscale restaurant on the 30th floor of the Pinnacle building downtown. The wall-to-wall windows offered panoramic city views, the kind of vista that reminded one of perspective. I arrived 30 minutes early, requesting a corner table that provided both privacy and a position of power. The maitre d', recognizing me from local business publications, accommodated without question. Dressed in a tailored navy suit that projected confidence and control, I reviewed the documents my legal team had prepared. Everything was in order. I was ready. Pamela arrived first, 5 minutes before our scheduled time. She had made an effort with her appearance, hair freshly colored, makeup carefully applied, wearing what appeared to be a new dress. Her eyes widened appreciatively at the restaurant's elegance. "This is lovely," she commented, taking the seat across from me. "Thank you for arranging it." "I thought Gerald would be joining us," I replied, noting his absence. "He's parking the car. He should be up momentarily." Right on cue, Gerald appeared, guided by the host to our table. At 62, he had aged considerably, heavier, balder, with jowls that hadn't been present in my memory. He still carried himself with the same self-importance, nodding curtly as he took his seat. "Isabella," he greeted, not bothering with warmth. I'm glad you've finally agreed to discuss the financial arrangements. We've brought some information about the tuition payment schedules.
No pleasantries.
No acknowledgement of our history.
Just straight to the money.
His directness actually simplified things. Before we discuss any arrangements, I said calmly, I'd like to establish some context. Gerald glanced at his watch. We have a meeting with Madison's academic advisor at 2. Can we focus on the logistics? I smiled thinly. This won't take long. The waiter approached to take our order. I requested sparkling water only, while Pamela and Gerald ordered full meals. Of course they would. This was likely the most expensive restaurant they'd visited in years, and they assumed I was paying. When we were alone again, I folded my hands on the table. 18 years ago, you packed my belongings in garbage bags and told me to leave your house. I was 16 years old. You gave me $300 and withdrew all parental support, financial, emotional, and physical. Pamela shifted uncomfortably. Gerald's expression hardened. Ancient history, he dismissed with a wave. We're here to discuss the present situation. The present situation is directly connected to that history. I continued steadily. You chose to abandon your legal and moral obligations to me. Now you're asking me to fulfill obligations to you that don't exist. We gave you independence, Pamela interjected. And look how well you've done. If we had coddled you, would you have developed the drive to build your company? The twisted logic was almost impressive. Let's be very clear, I said, my voice cooling further. You didn't give me independence. You committed parental abandonment, a criminal offense in most states. The fact that I succeeded doesn't retroactively justify what you did. Gerald leaned forward, irritation flashing across his face. Listen, we didn't come here for a therapy session about your teenage angst. We're talking about the education of bright young people with promising futures. Are you going to help your siblings or not? Half-siblings, I corrected. And that depends entirely on my terms. I removed a folder from my briefcase and placed it on the table. I've had my legal team prepare some documents. Gerald reached for the folder eagerly, assumingly it contained check information. His expression darkened as he scanned the first page. What is this? An educational trust?
Yes.
I'm willing to establish a trust to fund Hayden, Madison, and Ryan's undergraduate education under specific conditions. Pamela's eyes lit up. That's wonderful. We knew you'd. The conditions, I continued, cutting her off, are non-negotiable. First, I will control the trust. Payments will be made directly to the educational institutions, not to you or the students. Second, living expenses will be covered through a meal card and housing system, with a modest monthly stipend for personal expenses. Third, and this is crucial, the siblings will meet with me personally at least once per quarter. Gerald's face flushed with anger. Absolutely not. We don't need your conditions or your control. We just need the money. That's all you've ever needed from me, isn't it? I observed. When I was an inconvenient teenager, you needed my room. Now you need my money. But you don't get to dictate terms this time. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. You think because you've made some money, you can control our family? That you can buy access to our children? Your children? I raised an eyebrow. Interesting choice of words. Tell me, do Hayden, Madison, and Ryan know about me? The silence that followed answered more clearly than words could have. They don't know they have a half-sister, do they? I pressed. Pamela looked down at her hands. We never found the right time to tell them. The revelation shouldn't have shocked me, but it did. They hadn't just removed me from their home. They had erased me from their family narrative entirely. So for 18 years, you've pretended I don't exist, I said quietly. And now you want me to silently fund their education while continuing to be your family's ghost. It would be confusing for them now, Gerald argued. They don't need to know about ancient family complications. I'm not a complication. I'm your wife's daughter. I turned to Pamela. Their half-sister. What difference does it make? Gerald demanded. They've grown up without you. They don't need you in their lives now. Then they don't need my money either. I closed the folder. My final condition is non-negotiable. If you want my financial support, you will tell your children the truth about me and about what you did. All of it. Before any money changes hands. Gerald stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is extortion. You're holding money over our heads to force your way into our family. No, I corrected calmly. I'm establishing boundaries around how I'm willing to help. You're free to decline. Come on, Pamela, he ordered. We're leaving. We'll figure out the tuition another way. Pamela hesitated, looking between her husband and me. Gerald, maybe we should consider. Now, Pamela. His tone left no room for argument. As he stormed toward the elevator, Pamela lingered, conflict evident in her expression. He'll calm down, she said quietly. We do need the help. Maybe we can work something out. My terms won't change, I replied. And they apply to you as much as to him. I won't be your secret shame anymore, Pamela. Either I exist as part of this family's history, or I don't exist to you at all, including financially. She bit her lip. It's complicated, Bella. We've built a certain narrative over the years. Yes, a fictional one. The kids have always believed our family is perfect. No family is perfect, especially not one built on erasing a child. Pamela glanced toward the elevator, where Gerald was impatiently holding the door. I need to go.
I'll talk to him.
Try to make him understand. Do what you need to do. My offer stands as stated. After she left, I remained at the table, watching the city sprawl below. The confrontation had gone almost exactly as I'd anticipated, yet I felt strangely hollow. The righteous anger that had carried me through the meeting ebbed, leaving quiet certainty in its wake. 3 days passed without contact. Then, a text from an unknown number. Is it true? Are you really our sister? This is Madison Wilson. The message was followed by another. Mom finally told us everything. I have so many questions. Can we meet? I stared at the phone, emotions churning. They knew. Pamela had actually told them the truth, or some version of it. This was uncharted territory. After careful consideration, I agreed to meet Madison at a quiet cafe near her campus. She arrived looking nervous, a younger version of Pamela with Gerald's chin and height. She hesitated before sitting across from me. I don't even know what to call you, she admitted. Mom always said she only had 3 children. Bella's fine, I offered. Why didn't you ever try to contact us? The question held no accusation, just genuine curiosity. I was explicitly unwelcome, I explained carefully. And later, I assumed you didn't know I existed. We didn't. Madison twisted her napkin anxiously. Mom told us yesterday. Dad was furious. They had this huge fight. Hayden still isn't speaking to either of them. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. She shook her head. Don't apologize. What they did to you was, I can't even imagine. Throwing out your own child. Who does that? The validation from this young woman, this stranger who shared my blood, was unexpectedly powerful. Over the next month, I met each sibling individually. Hayden was angry and defensive at first, loyal to the parents he had always known as devoted. His hostility softened only after seeing photographs Lexi had preserved from our teenage years, tangible evidence of the girl who had been discarded. Ryan, the youngest, approached our meeting with filmmaker's curiosity. It's like discovering a missing chapter in our family story, he observed. One that completely changes the plot. I established the educational trust as promised, with quarterly meetings as a condition for continued support. I maintained firm boundaries with Pamela and Gerald, civil interaction during necessary communications about the trust, but no personal relationship. Pamela continued attempting to bridge the gap, sending birthday cards and holiday invitations I politely declined. She wanted absolution without accountability, forgiveness without genuine remorse. I couldn't offer that, not yet. My relationship with my half-siblings developed slowly, cautiously. We were connected by blood but separated by years of absence and the uncomfortable knowledge of our parents' actions. Madison became the most consistent presence, texting regularly with updates about her pre-med studies. Hayden gradually warmed to occasional phone calls, while Ryan sent video projects for my feedback. During our third quarterly meeting, Madison asked the question they had all likely been considering. Will you ever forgive Mom and Dad? I considered my answer carefully. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a process. I'm working on it, but it doesn't mean I'll ever trust them or want them in my life. That's fair, she acknowledged. Sometimes I'm not sure I forgive them either, and I had the easy side of the situation. The journey from abandoned teenager to successful adult had shaped every aspect of my identity. The wounds would always be part of me, but they no longer defined me. I had built a life, a career, and now, tentative connections with siblings I never expected to know. Family, I had learned, was more complex than biology. It was created through choices, daily decisions to value, protect, and remain present for one another. My chosen family, Cameron, Diana, Lexi, and others who had earned my trust, remained my foundation. My half-siblings represented something new. A bridge between my past and future, a chance to reclaim part of what had been taken without surrendering my hard-won autonomy. As for Pamela and Gerald, I maintained the boundaries they had never respected. They had made their choice 18 years ago. Now I had made mine, to help their children without allowing them back into my life. To acknowledge our connection without accepting their narrative. To move forward on my terms, not theirs. The abandoned girl who had slept on her best friend's floor with $300 to her name would always be part of me. But she wasn't the whole story anymore. I had written the rest myself, one determined day at a time. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who hurt you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel. I share new stories about resilience and self-determination every week. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more valuable than the one we're born into. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey, whatever challenges you may be facing.